All right, we'll be talking about the milestones between 1987 and 2010. We have quite a lot to get through, as you can see right here. We decided to include a couple more because it was very difficult to sift through the very important ones. But yeah, we'll just go ahead and get started. All right, the view protection guidelines were adapted to protect scenic view corridors in Vancouver. These establish 27 view cones to try to preserve the views of the North Shore Mountains, which are arguably the most important signature view. These restricted the shape, orientation, and size of buildings. Overall, the guidelines proved largely successful. They also served, obviously, to affect real estate value. Over time, they have been amended. There have been exceptions to the guidelines that have been made. For example, one policy permits buildings to exceed heights when they're in the shadow of the adjacent building. And finally, keep going. And then significant primary documents. We have the view protection guidelines. And by the way, whenever you see a document up here, we actually have the hard copy right here. So if you'd like to go through them after the presentation, you're more than welcome.
So in 1989, the community amenity contributions introduced in formalized the city amenity negotiation process. And because it's applicable to a developer emissions rebuilding involving increased density and change in use. So in the long-term impact, like other levies that are legally circumstanced, the flexible ability of CEC allows the city to support an open-ended range of amenities. So why it's a milestone? Because the city has only, in the form, the city has only the right to request CAC and cannot require the discretion. But when have this, it can rebuilding approval at the discretion of council, and the city will not permit development unless a suitable CAC is secured.
Yes, the SFU Harbor Center. SFU was the first university branch which moved to downtown Vancouver, and after SFU it followed by UBC and BCIT. So this movement in universities in downtown added more educational aspects to downtown Vancouver and was a big movement for the city. And also the campus affect the downtown east side because it's the Hastings Street is the places that radical homelesses and drug addicts are there, and it changed the character of downtown, the downtown east side a little bit. Next.
Okay. In 1990, Vancouver introduced wheelchair accessible diesel and trolley buses. Because why it's a milestone? Because it's traffic began to install wheelchair lifts onto its buses in the year 1990. So it's the first time wheelchair usage could be accommodated on regular buses. It's good for the disabled people. So the short-term impact is that Vancouver became the first city in Canada to provide a wheelchair accessible to diesel and trolley buses. And also the traffic becomes more accessible in Vancouver.
All right, in 1990, the city adopted an environmental agenda based on recommendations outlined in the Clouds of Change final report. These were 32 groundbreaking recommendations for addressing atmospheric change. They're arguably the first of their kind in any municipality. The city developed a special task force on atmospheric change to develop these. Then Gordon Price was kind enough to send me a commentary on the Clouds of Change report. He was actually the liaison to the city on the report, and he explains that. Here. Sorry about that. Mike Brown seems a little pessimistic about the results. As he explains, we in fact made very little difference. Our predictions as to levels of carbon dioxide and impacts were derided as being wildly imaginative. We turned out to be conservative. Virtually every one of the 35 recommendations got glowing acceptance comments from the powers that be, but little was implemented. Now, although there's limited evidence that any of these recommendations really materialized, it did send a progressive, sustainable precedent. Here's a little more detail. Now, whether or not it was influential is very difficult to tell, but we do have a list, just a few future innovations dealing with reducing carbon emissions. The next group will touch into a few. Then here's the document. Right. Then the Central Area Plan, 1991, aimed at updating the 1975 downtown official development plan. It was argued that commercialization was overestimated, and the city sought to repurpose the downtown for something else. Now, the central area was defined as something new. It was expanded to include everything north of the Broadway corridor, east of Arbutus, a little farther down. Yes, Broadway. Thank you. Now, it had a few significant impacts. Primarily, it converted formerly low-rise commercial district into a high-density residential district. It was seen as a successful top-down planning approach, primarily because it didn't affect a lot of people who lived there because it was primarily brown site development. The plan also developed 28 central area districts, which could each have their own distinct rezonings based on the guidelines.
In 1991, Vancouver Public Library Design Competition. It could be another milestone in the city because actually Vancouver Public Library used to be on the corner of Burrard Street and Robson Street, but it was a small building. So city decided to have a competition, a design competition, which was a rare event in Vancouver for such a major public building. And actually they had an agreement with the federal government, and after that they set up a jury, and the jury selected 3 teams. And the interesting part is the jury opened up those 3 designs to the public, and the Moshe Safdie design was the public favorable. So it was really interesting. Yes, and after public chose the favorable design, it is really good for Vancouver residents because it gives them the sense of belonging to the city and to this building for residents. Next, and also it established a significant building in the downtown area. Another thing about this building, it didn't cost the Vancouver taxpayer very much money because the tower building, which is owned by the city, rented to the federal government, and from its revenue, they built a building of library.
Right.
Oh, the city plan. Yes, in 1992, city plan in Vancouver approved in 1995 actually, and affirmed Vancouver as a city of neighborhood. It was the first comprehensive citywide planning initiative since the first one, the original one in 1928. Three important directions for city's future was community engagement and also housing choice and affordability, and also city neighborhood.
The city plan, also what I think one of the major achievements was public engagement process. The city plan, just to be clear, was essentially a platform for discussion between the public and the city on all of the city's responsibilities. Now, the city recognized that meaningful public participation must recognize the public stake in the planning outcome by incorporating the public at every stage in the decision-making process. This is summarized by the phrase that the city invited the public to walk in council's shoes. This is largely regarded as a successful experiment in city engagement because the city was able to develop these neighborhood plans and develop policies which had a lot of public backing. Now, that also redefined what it meant to be a citizen and what it meant to be a responsible government. Now, unfortunately, the legacy was a little short because in 2006, in the World Urban Forum, the mayor, who was a little concerned that things weren't moving quite fast enough, decided by executive action to implement the eco-density initiative. A lot of people, it's been quite controversial. Now, here we have a few documents. And 888 Beach. In the former presentation, Ian mentioned the podium tower typology, which became incredibly popular. It was pioneered by 888 Beach, designed by K.M. Cheng Architects. I won't go into that too much.
In 1993, Woodward's bankruptcy led to 2003 Woodward's redevelopment achievement, which is a significant mixed use in downtown area. Actually, Woodward's was a department store was a very famous department store in downtown East Side, and it went bankrupt in 1993. It was sold to the Hudson's Bay Company, and this company didn't reinvestment the site, and the building was closed. And after that, the radical homelesses found this site as a social housing, found this building, and they squatted there. And so gradually they changed the character of this neighborhood. In 2002, Woodward's squat gathered popular media coverage. So all of this process led to Woodward's redevelopment in 2003. Woodward's project is perhaps the most significant mixed use in downtown East Side. It consists of social housing, industrial retail, institutional retail, office, and community usage. And this comprehensive mixed-use development serves as the city's historic and social heart in long term.
Okay. In 1995, the industrial land strategy promotes the rotation of selected industrial areas. Actually, it have 3 points. The first point is updated the definition of industry to better accommodate service business. And the second is the revised outright height and lot limits to ensure compatibility with the nearby residential area. And the last one is revised provision to conditional uses. And the previous one. And we can see in the Forest Creek Flats and Burberry Waterfront and Powell Clock and Monty Pleasant and Grandview. These areas also it's in the south of the Mary Frasco. So So the strategy accommodates the retention of most of the city areas existing industrial land base for industrial and service to meet the needs of points related to industry and also the city serving and city-oriented industries.
A significant event in Vancouver's history was also the 1997 turnover of Hong Kong to China from the British. That was important because the anticipation of the event led to a lot of immigration to Vancouver and investment in the real estate market. There was also initial impact on single-family neighborhoods where at that time there was a lot of demolition. It's difficult to correlate the two. I don't really have the statistics, but we do know that there was a lot of racialized discourse surrounding the creation of monster homes, which were often attributed to the Asian immigrants. Now, the Higher Building Study of 1997 realized that was a response to the Skyline Study that, if you recall, tried to shape the downtown skyline into a dome. Now people started to get worried that that was a very monotonous shape, and the city decided to adopt these guidelines to allow exceptions, allow 7 distinct sites which could exceed these height limits. Now, these sites were subject to a special review process administered by the Building Advisory Panel, and they were also required to meet certain architectural level of excellence, which was negotiated by the Urban Design Panel. Now, the impacts, it enabled the city to negotiate more closely with developers to achieve these distinct sites. There have been 4 sites approved: Sinsen, Shangri-La, the private residences at Hotel Georgia, One Wall Center, and Trump Tower. And also an interesting thing to mention, if you are familiar with the Vancouver House, West Bank development, that is a product of both the Higher Building Study and the View Protection Guidelines, and the distinct shape of it, trying to avoid the view, is essentially a physical manifestation of the view cone.
In 1999, the Southeast Falls Creek development was another milestone, which is the city decided and wanted to make the Vancouver to the leadership in sustainability, and at that time they made a policy statement for this development. The plan designed for an integrated and sustainable neighborhood in which transportation and jobs are close to the home. They proposed the different mix of types of housing, and 1/3 market, 1/3 middle income, and 1/3 non-market housing type. And also, the primary impact was the athlete village for athlete village. They wanted to be as a global model for sustainability during 2010 Winter Olympic. And in long-term impact, global media attention and popularizing and exposing Vancouver's sustainable planning initiatives. And also some private investment happened in this development.
In 2008, the Sankrina Vancouver in the final stage of construction. Why we consider as a milestone? Because it's the first mixed-use skyscraper in downtown Vancouver, and it combines a hotel and residential apartments and a spa and urban fair. So it's very comprehensive. Buildings in the downtown. Also, the tower is also the tallest man-made structure in British Columbia.
And 1998, actually it's 2003. 2003 Winter Olympic referendum led to the 2010 Winter Olympic in Vancouver. Vancouver hosted the 2010 Winter Olympic after a referendum in 2003, and the length of the preparation time for the Olympic means several years of increase in transportation, jobs, construction, and also infrastructure developments in the city. So the most important investment include Vancouver Conventions, the extension of Vancouver Convention Center, construction of Canada Line, and connecting Vancouver to the Richmond and airport, international airport. And also after that, this referendum led to the 2010 Winter Olympic, which was the milestone for the city, the exposure for the city, and the international media attention during the Olympic for city. And also, I think it's the last one, the 2010 City of Vancouver rental housing strategy. The City of Vancouver considered rental housing strategy to respond to the increasing demand for rental housing and rental units. Because of the low vacancy rate and also high rent, these two signs shows the shortage in rental housing. So the city strategy involves the development of policies and tools to encourage the protection and also expansion of rental housing stock.
So those were all our milestones. Feel free to approach us after the presentations are done. And yeah, enjoy the next presentation.
Thank you.